been a professional troll for a very long time. If you remember Michael Moore, the fat guy who does bad documentaries going all the way back to Roger and Me, he's not untalented, is the truth. If you watch his documentaries, he knows how to put together a film. He knows how to put together a documentary. He spent a lot of time very early in his career suggesting socialism was the best. Now he's moved on to full-blown communism. But his new movie is all about how America keeps invading all these places in the world, and it's so terrible. American invasion creates just all this blowback. Well, Michael Moore isn't getting very much attention for his new documentary. And so the way he's decided to fight that is by going after Donald Trump, because Trump is the owner and occupier of all mainstream media. So today, Michael Moore, who is, he's beginning to, he looks either like, I mean, there's no way to do a Michael Moore story without making fun of his looks. There's just no way to do it. So we're just going to do it. He either looks like Toodles from Hook, or for those who've seen that film, or he looks like a 75-year-old grandmother, right? I mean, those are the two things. And he's beginning to look more like this as time goes on. He looks like a homeless grandmother on the street. So there he is outside of Trump Tower, holding a sign that says, "We are all Muslim," right? Because he's demonstrating to the world that he stands with Muslims and not with Donald Trump. And he wrote an open letter to Donald Trump that reads as follows, quote, "Dear Donald Trump, you may remember, you do after all have a perfect memory, that we met back in November of 1998 in the green room of a talk show, where we were both scheduled to appear one afternoon. But just before going on, I was pulled aside by a producer from the show who said that you were nervous about being on the set with me. She said you didn't want to be ripped apart and you wanted to be reassured I wouldn't go after you." "Does he think I'm going to tackle him and put him in a chokehold?" I asked, bewildered. "No," the producer replied. "He just seems all jittery about you." "Huh, I've never met the guy. There's no reason for him to be scared," I said. "I really don't know much about him other than he seems to like his name on stuff. I'll talk to him if you want me to." And so, as you may remember, I did. This is all Michael Moore's letter to Donald Trump. "I went up and introduced myself to you. Quote, the producer says you're worried I might say and do something to you during the show. Hey, no offense, but I barely know who you are. I'm from Michigan. Please don't worry. We're going to get along just fine. You seemed relieved, then leaned in and said to me, I just didn't want any trouble out there, and I just wanted to make sure that you know you and I got along, that you weren't going to pick on me for something ridiculous." Pick on you? I thought, where are we, in third grade? I was struck by how you, a self-described tough guy from Queens, seemed like such a fraidy cat. First of all, I don't believe Michael Moore's photographic memory for conversations that happened 17 years ago, because I don't think anybody has that sort of photographic memory. But we'll take it for what it's worth. He says, "You and I went on to do the show. Nothing untoward happened between us. I didn't pull on your hair, didn't put gum on your seat. What a wuss," was all I remember thinking as I left the set. And now, here we are in 2015, and, like many other angry white guys, you are frightened by a bogeyman who is out to get you. That bogeyman, in your mind, are all Muslims. That bogeyman are all Muslims. Not just the ones who have killed, but all Muslims. Fortunately, Donald, you and your supporters no longer look like what America actually is today. And this is the leftist triumphalism. We are not a country of angry white guys. Here is a statistic that is going to make your hair spin. 81% of the electorate who will pick the president next year are either female, people of color, or young people between the ages of 18 and 35. In other words, not you, and not the people who want you leading their country. Now, to take a pause for just 1 second. 81% of the electorate are female, people of color, or young people. Okay, first of all, females already are 55% of the electorate. Okay, so I'm not sure that this is coming as a shock to anyone. It turns out there are just as many women as men in the population, and women vote at a higher rate than men do. And as far as young people being a percentage of the population, this has also been historically true. So, you know, this idea that Trump doesn't know this is, of course, silly. But Michael Moore continues, "So in desperation and insanity, you call for a ban on all Muslims entering this country. I was raised to believe that we are all each other's brother and sister, regardless of race, creed, or color. That means if you want to ban Muslims, you're first going to have to ban me and everyone else. We are all Muslim." And he continues, "Just as we are all Mexican, we are all Catholic and Jewish and white and black and every shade in between. We are all children of God or nature or whatever you believe in, part of the human family, and nothing you say or do can change that fact one iota. If you don't like living by these American rules, you need to go to the timeout room in one of your towers and sit there and think about what you've done." And then he asks everybody to take pictures like this one. Presumably all of them are more photogenic than Michael Moore. I want to focus in for just a second on these couple of paragraphs, because this really is leftism in a nutshell, and it is so ignorant, and it is so stupid. I mean, just truly stupid, truly idiotic. I mean, like, you have to have a low IQ to believe these things, or you have to have been inculcated in a school of thought that suggests that values are of no consequence whatsoever. He says, This part, and that's just really amazing. He says, I was raised to believe we are all each other's brother and sister, regardless of race, creed, or color. Okay, race and color, I agree. Creed, sort of depends on what you think, right? Are you really brothers with the neo-Nazi next door, Michael Moore? Are you really brothers with the, I mean, he probably is brothers with the communists, but are you really brothers with Stalin? Are you brothers with the world's worst human beings? Are you brothers with the ISIS murderers who are raping and looting people? Are these the people who are your brothers and sisters? Because this is what the left believes. They believe in this brotherhood of man. This is back to John Lennon's Imagine, right? The brotherhood of man, where religion makes no difference, and ideology makes no difference, and philosophy makes no difference. It's an amazing statement. He says, if you want to ban Muslims, you're first going to have to ban me and everyone else. First of all, Trump hasn't talked about banning Muslims. He's not deporting Muslims who are in the United States. He's talked about a temporary ban on Muslim immigration to the United States until we can get better background checks. Now, I disagree with the policy, as I've said. But to suggest that this is, first of all, it's not racism, certainly, because Islam isn't a race. It's not colorism, because Islam isn't a color. It's creedism. And turns out that America always has had certain philosophical leanings, just like any country has philosophical leanings. In fact, America is unique in the respect that it was founded on a basic philosophy. It was founded on a basic ideology embodied in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And as soon as you say that a country is founded on a philosophy, it means it wasn't founded on other philosophies. You can't be both A and B. You're either A or you're B. But for Michael Moore, we're all supposed to pretend that everybody is both A and B. When he says, we are all Mexican, we are all Catholic and Jewish, I'm not Catholic. I'm not Muslim. Catholics aren't Jewish. Muslims aren't Jewish. Many Muslims are trying to kill Jews. Like this weird idea that we're all the same. Maybe we're all the same in terms of we're human beings, but that doesn't mean we're all the same in terms of how we act as human beings or what we choose to believe as human beings. Here's the irony of all of this. You've got this picture of Michael Moore standing outside Trump Tower with a sign that says, we are all Muslim. ISIS agrees. ISIS fully agrees. We are all Muslim. You and I, me speaking, you watching, we are all Muslims. We just haven't realized it yet. And the only way for us to realize it is for a gun to be put to our head and the trigger to be pulled if we disagree. Or a knife to be put to our throat and it pulled across our windpipe if we disagree. Because they agree with Michael Moore. We are all Muslim. The entire world is Muslim. Let me tell you something. I am not Muslim. I'm not Muslim because I don't believe in Islam. End of story. Doesn't mean that everything Islam believes is bad. It doesn't mean that the Quran is inherently terrible. It doesn't mean any of those things. But it does mean I am not a Muslim, and that there are distinctions between my philosophy and that philosophy. You know, I know that we've gone to this place where everybody wants to paraphrase JFK now during the Cold War and the occupation of Berlin by the Soviets. The East Germans and the Soviets took over East Berlin, and Berlin was blockaded. And JFK famously went to Berlin. He said that he was a Berliner. He's also kind of sausage, as I've mentioned before. But he said he was a Berliner, and now we do this routine. Every time there's a shooting in France, we are all French. It's funny, the one I never see is we are all Jews, right? That one I never see. I see we are all Muslims after Muslims kill a bunch of people, right? That I see from the left. Right? After Muslims shoot 14 people in San Bernardino, and by the way, those Muslim terrorists, they were buried today, full Islamic ceremony in an Islamic cemetery. So much for the idea that they're not Islamic. I can tell you this, if a Jew were to commit the sort of heinous acts that were committed here, no rabbi would probably let them be buried in Jewish burial ground. Like that's an actual issue in Jewish law. I know it is for Christians too. I mean, this has been a long time thing in Christianity that if you commit suicide, for example, can you be buried in a Christian cemetery? Can you be buried in consecrated ground? Right? But in any case, this idea we are all Muslim. No, we aren't. And the only people who think we are leftists who are fully insane or who are fully indoctrinated in stupidity, or Muslims who believe that we all should be Muslims and that they get to kill us if we disagree. So it's this sort of leftism that leads to the rise of Donald Trump, because there are so many people who look at this and they go, no, we're not. No, we're not. And to prove that we're not, we'll just ban all the people who say they're Muslims from coming in the country. There's a reactionary streak to Trump's support base that you can't say too much about, because it really does exist. But this is reactionary leftism, and reactionary leftism is much more dangerous than the reactionary silliness of Donald Trump. I mean, this reactionary leftism of the left, which is Muslims go and kill people, therefore we're all Muslim. And we've seen this over and over. I mean, you want the ironic story of the day? So remember a few weeks ago, we talked about this story from Great Britain. This story from Great Britain was kind of amazing, where there was a Muslim guy, presumably who tried to stab a bunch of people in the subway. We talked about this last week, right? It was after San Bernardino. And there was a guy who was walking by, and he was shouting, "You ain't no Muslim, bruv," right? With the British accent. And this went viral, and it was a hashtag and all this. Turns out the guy had to go into hiding because he was being threatened by, wait for it, the Buddhists. No, he was being threatened by the Muslims. So the guy who says, "You ain't no Muslim," there are a bunch of Muslims who say, "Wait a second. Yeah, we are. And we will kill you for saying that." So all of this politically correct nonsense, the kind of stuff that Michael Moore is pushing, it's going to get a lot of people killed. A lot more people will die because there are people who believe we are all Muslims. These are the sort of people who, when